Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. This is Nilay Patel from SilverSilk and More, bringing you guys another fantastic tutorial today. Today, we're going to be making a necklace called Making Waves, which looks like this. And I really love this design for a lot of reasons. It uses the SilverSilk in yet another unusual way. We're draping it and really integrating it within our design. And then we get to mix all of these different textures and beads together in a cohesive design, all with tying it into a really shiny rhinestone clasp, not a clasp, a bead cap. So this is just a very sparkly, elegant, beautiful design that I really, really enjoy. And I'm going to go ahead and pan down to my table here so you guys can see what I'm working with. This is a live show, so we encourage if you've got some comments you want to make, questions, which will be answered after the tutorial has completely been taught. You guys can post those questions and we will read them out loud. I've got Miss Joan helping me in the background, and we're just going to have a really cool little fun show together. So what I'm going to do is, before I get into my materials, I'm going to talk about the tools, because I always have kind of just glazed over them in my past tutorials. So I'm going to make sure I don't do that this time. So I'm working with my cutters. This is the Lindstrom wire cutters. Use this for your beading wire, craft wire, leather cord. Any sort of soft wire is really good for these guys, and they'll stay sharp for the end of your entire life. So I've had these for, let's see, nearly 14 years. I think I got it at a bead show in Philly, and it was gifted to me, and I've had them ever since and used them and love them so much. I want to buy more of their tools down the road. They're a little bit pricier, really made for the jewelry like expert level, I think. But there are some really great tools out there that I enjoy using day to day that aren't expensive and that are still high quality, such as my Weber's tool set. So this is the round nose pliers, which is also something that you'll need today. I'm also going to bring out my chain nose pliers in case I need them, also from Weber's. And then I believe that's pretty much it, aside from a pair of crimpers, which we'll also need. I'm going to use my Xuron crimpers today and not the magical crimpers, and I'll talk about why a little bit later. And it's so good to see everyone pop in. Maria says, hello, Nilay, and Silky's beautiful project to start the day. Absolutely, Maria. Thanks so much for tuning in. Love seeing your name pop in. All right. So this necklace has several parts to it. We're going to be combining quite a few different techniques into one design. So we're going to work through this as thoroughly and carefully as we can. Oh, one other tool that I want to mention is a beading awl. This is going to be helpful for whenever we make our beading wire loops later down the road. Maria says, I'm in. Hello, handsome. Thank you, Maria. Hello, beautiful and gorgeous. All you people are gorgeous out there. The beading awl is useful for a lot of things, and I just love having it on hand for whatever reason might pop up that just comes, yeah, just very handy. So I'm going to set that out to the side, and let's go ahead and cover our materials. So I'm going to start with what's on my bead board, which is, by the way, from jewelloom.com. And this bead board is especially made for SilverSilk. Love it to pieces. It's compartmentalized. It's got a nice little measuring tape on it. And these little holes catch beads so that they're easy to pick up with your needle or wire if you should be using wire. Vivian says, very excited, new to SilverSilk. Well, welcome, Vivian. Welcome to the dark side of crafting with SilverSilk. Nilay has captured my attention with his creativity, and he does such a wonderful job in the videos and live shows. Thank you, Nilay. Thank you for tuning in. What a great compliment. Just made my day. We got our friends over from YouTube and Facebook tuning in today. Okay, so I've got a clasp. This is a lobster claw clasp that is from my collection at silversilkonline.com. All of my findings, not all of them, because I carry some other findings from other companies, but the ones that are labeled custom findings from SilverSilk are custom plated. So this means that all of my findings have a similar color with them. There's consistency across the board, from my jump rings to my lobster claw clasp to my single strand end caps. all the way to my terminators, everything, you name it. You guys have seen, some of you have seen what's on the website. So that consistent plating is high quality. It's a brass base finding, which means that it's some robust metal there for you, for sure. It's not going to be as soft as pewter. And so whenever you crimp down on stuff or think about the long term of the findings, it's going to be a very good clasp or a good end cap to keep around for a very long time, just based on what it's made and how it's made and how it's plated. You'll need a couple jump rings for the clasp. I've got my shiny rhinestone end caps. I love these. Found them a while back from one of my vendors and just had to have them and then had to give them to you guys. It does have also a brass core inside, and then they're just decorated with rhinestones and all the brights and sparkles, as you can imagine, on the outside. They're only exclusive to the kits that you guys have picked up. In fact, I think there's still a set left in the Shore kit that are these colors. I couldn't find the caramel color. Sadly, the vendor didn't carry them anymore. But I was able to grab some more of these and put those in that kit at least. So if you're wondering where I got those, that's where that's from. I've also got a pair of these 4mm Bicone crystals out to the side. These will be used for the top of the cone whenever we kind of finish out our design. So I'm going to keep those out to the side. I've got some crimps. You could get away with using just 2 crimps for this entire project, and I'll talk about how and why later. I set out 6 because I'm going to make it easy for you guys. And the crimps and the beading wire are not included in the kit. That's something that you guys might have in your bead stash. And if you don't, you can grab some from softflexcompany.com. I love their crimps and their beading wire. It is superior quality from any other beading wire and crimps that I've ever tried. But a way to make this project easier is to individually crimp all the different strands of the necklace and then combine it all together with the wire at the end. Again, we'll cover that a little bit later. So I have 6 crimps total out there to the side. And then you're going to need some beads for our chain and some chain links. We're going to be making this chain for our necklace rope. And in fact, we might go ahead and finish out the other chain while we're here, just so that we have it finished. So you'll need some beads to sort of space this out and give the chain some color. Here I have 2mm little crystals that I went ahead and strung on some craft wire. This craft wire is also from Softflex Company. I use a lot of their products, and I'm not apologetic about it because our products are pretty damn good. So I'm using their 26 gauge craft wire in silver color. That is just big enough for to create, I guess, a very strong link. But also that wire is thin enough to pass through smaller beads. If you're uncomfortable with using smaller beads, you can absolutely switch out to bigger beads that complement the necklace colors. In this case, I'm just using an aqua color. But the smaller beads were included in the kit if you did grab one, and so you can use that if you're trying to make this exact design. So let's go ahead and attach it to our paperclip chain here. I cut these into 3 link chain pieces. So here I just have 3 of those. And you can use any jewelry chain if you want to. You do not have to break it up. You can, in fact, just use the jewelry chain in its entirety. The reason for breaking this up is to give it some extra length in the chain. And also, if you're wanting to just add a little bit of color and sparkle to the rest of your design, this is a great excuse to do that. Or just to use up leftover beads, right? It's not like we have any of those. All right, so I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, and we're going to do a wire wrapped loop here at the end. So I'm going to uncurl this, get that ready. You can use a pair of nylon jaw pliers to straighten out the wire if you want to. I've noticed that the 26 gauge wire is quite soft, and so you don't really need to. So we'll start off with going ahead and putting it into our pliers. So I'm about maybe 4mm down from the tip, and I've got about 1 inch of wire sticking up. I'm going to bend it forward, and I'm going to go ahead and bend it around. I want to make sure that my loop is big enough to accommodate the width of this length whenever I insert that in. I'm not going to quite insert it in yet. I'm going to grab the neck with the very tip of my pliers, and I'm going to fold toward me. You'll notice that the wire that's the shorter part kind of moved back into a 45-degree angle whenever I did that. So I'm going to insert it in again all the way, and I'm going to readjust that little piece of wire back around the neck. What this did was it changed the shape of my loop, essentially. It was over on one side, and now it's centered. You'll notice this because the neck kind of just extends. If you can imagine a line here across the loop, it is a symmetrical loop. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my chain link in. You can open up the link or this little wire piece just by kind of folding it up. The wire wrap loop, I guess, would be better terms. And then kind of pressing it back down to get it readjusted again so that my link is now attached to the loop that I'm making. Okay, once I've done that, I can use my chain nose pliers. Let's use the thicker ones, in fact, and kind of grasp the loop and the link at the same time. This is going to give you a very sturdy hold for whenever you coil this around. And I'm going to coil it about 3 times. I like making wire wrap loops because of the security that it gives me. If I just did a regular simple loop with this 26 gauge wire, there's a sure guarantee that it's going to fall apart. Okay, and now you can just fold that little bit in to the best of your ability. I use my more tapered pair of chain nose pliers to do this, or my crimpers, in fact, because they have that little flat tip in the front part of my pliers there. This really does move around on me. And I'm working so delicately. There we go. So now I've got this perfectly little wire wrap loop that is ready for my beads to string on. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Now, if you're confused, you could definitely replay this part over and over again until you've practiced and kind of gotten more familiar with how to make these wire wrap loops. I will say doing it with a thinner wire is very easy. Now, we're going to do something a little different for the second side. We had all that wire and freedom to kind of work with for the first part, but now we're working with beads that are suddenly strung on. So what we need to do start with first is to accommodate for the space that we need to coil around that wire around the neck. So what I'm going to do is grab my smaller tip chain nose pliers, and I'm going to just bend my wire forward. Okay, this automatically gets me to a 90-degree angle with my wire, so that whenever I make my loop here in a second, scooch that bead back down, get it in place. Okay, again, I'm going to kind of put that elbow of my 90-degree angle just right into my pliers, make sure that it is 4 millimeters down, just like before, and I'm going to fold that wire over. And I'm going to reinsert, and I'm going to work my wire back around there, just like that. So essentially what I have here is that my loop is already nice and centered because we made that 90-degree angle bend earlier. And my wire is positioned to coil around. And I realized that I totally forgot to insert my chain link. So you need to make sure to do that before you do anything else. So I'm going to uncoil and see if I can fix it. Sometimes you can get away with it without ruining the shape too much. Okay, there we go. Silly little mistakes. Okay, so I'm going to lift up, insert, and then go ahead and coil around. See, you guys, even I make mistakes sometimes. It happens, right? There we go. Luckily, the smaller wire is very forgiving. I'm going to shut my door because there's noise happening. So excuse me for just a second. Right. hard for me to focus whenever there's stuff happening. Okay, now I can trim off my wire. And I can tuck in my little piece of wire there. So that's how you make a link with the wire. Now we're going to do a second one, but we're going to go a little faster. Just to, kind of move this class along. I will say, though, there's two parts to this class that are a little bit tedious. One is this, making the chain, because we're working with wire and trying to make these loops as perfect as possible. And the second is measuring all of the different lengths of beads that we're going to string together for our necklace. But once you get those two things down, this really does go quite fast. Okay. So grabbing that. And again, if this part is just way too speedy, you can absolutely watch the explainer that I just did on replay over and over to your heart's content. And I will say, this is my style for making wire wrap loops. There are many different ways to do it, and there are no wrong answers to do it. Really, what you're looking for is consistency and perfection in your loops. So however or whatever you do to get there, doesn't matter as long as the end result looks intentional and as best as you can make it. And I will say there are times when my loops are just awful because I'm speeding through it. And really the trick, I think, is just to slow down and, just take it a moment at a time and try to do your best and really practice with those pliers. Okay. This time, do not forget to attach the link. Making myself a note. Okay, finish out my 90-degree angle bend. I'm making sure to lift up with my pliers where it feels comfortable for my arm. I think folks, in my experience of teaching, especially a beginner level class, will kind of overcompensate making the loop by moving their entire arm and body around. And when it starts to feel uncomfortable is really when the loop starts to look terrible. So once you get a little practice down and you start to rotate the pliers and know what is happening at the same time that your loop is being formed, you'll just get better and better at it. Okay, there we go. All right, coiling the wire around the stem or the neck of this other piece of wire here is really a great technique for pushing those beads down and getting them to stay in place. Sometimes simple loops, whenever I make them, tend to have a little bit of extra space that I unintentionally didn't want. And so I have some beads that kind of float around. Okay, I'm just being really meticulous and picky about where I'm putting this. There we go. There we go. Just a little patience there, and I got my wire to wrap around. So anyways, my chain is put together now. So that's the first step, right? The next is going to be a lot of measuring, but luckily I pre-strung this. So all we have to do is write down what these measurements are for your necklace. So I've got my handy dandy ruler here, and we're going to start with a crystal. I think that's how I put it in my description of my materials. So I've got 9 inches of 4mm crystals that are strung on beading wire. Let me explain to you what this beading wire is. I'm using Soft Touch by Softflex Wire. This is in the fine, which is perfect for gemstones, smaller beads, especially if you're wanting to get a very round drape, something that's not stiff, that just lays completely flat and limp when it's draped on. I suggest you going for the fine touch. It's a little higher quality than their standard beading wires that they've got, but only because it's so soft and it's got more wires within the coating that the wire is formed with. So I've used that, especially for this design, because we are using the pearls. So again, one strand will be for the 9-inch of crystals. Melanie says, oh, sorry. So that went out before I could read it. There we go. Thank you, Joe. I used this that first compartment of the crumpet to get those wires tucked in. Okay. I'm trying to think what a crumpet might be. Unless you meant pliers? Anyway, I see that Colleen also chimed in too. She says, I missed you guys too. Aw. Love seeing her face pop in. Her name and her face. All right. So I'm going to suggest maybe 7.5 inches of white pearl. These are 4 or 5 millimeter glass white pearls. And the other note that I want to make is after you've strung on whatever beads that you want to, whether it's from the kit or from your own stash, to make sure that you taper out the end a little bit. What I did was I went ahead and strung on a 4 millimeter crystal at the end. This will help to kind of package everything together whenever it's tucked into our bead cone, especially because we only have like 8 to 10 millimeters of space to work with. We want to make sure we taper out those ends so that they fit in really, really nice and snug. Okay, so I'm going to set those aside with some bead stoppers. 7.5 inch of pearls. And then we've got our Keshi pearls. These add some really great texture and color to the design. Just that nice pop of brown to really contrast those sea-themed colors. So here I've got about 6.5 inches, give or take. And I'm staggering all of these. I want them to lay in different lengths and different sections of my necklace whenever it's draped. If they all lay in the same space, you don't really get to see what the beads are because they're all overlapping each other. So it's good to have that staggered effect. And so these necklace links, these little beaded links will shrink as you kind of notice. So this one's 6.5, and I've got also a crystal on either end. Oh, I assumed crimper, but I like crumpet better. Now I get it. It wasn't talking about food, although I did miss breakfast this morning, so I was thinking about that as I read it. My brain goes all over the place, you guys. So, all right, I don't know, or I guess tea and crumpets is sort of it could be a breakfast item. I'm saying it's a breakfast item. So, yeah, I've got a 4 millimeter crystal on each side, again, to just taper out that end. And those are my 3 beaded wire links of beaded wire links that I need. What I'm saying. Lost my words today. Colleen says, checking up on my Facebook fam. Hope you all had a gorgeous holiday season. I certainly did, and we hope you have too, Colleen. And we love seeing you on all the different live videos and all of the stuff that you do to share the videos too. You're such a sweet soul. All right. The other 2 links that you will need that are not strung is the SilverSilk. So the SilverSilk capture chain is what we're using. You're going to need 11.5 inches of that. And if you guys have never worked with capture chain before, it is a gorgeous, supple, very luxurious, if I do say so myself, knitted wire chain. This has a ball chain core. So if you think of a fan pulley that you've seen at Lowe's or Home Depot, whenever you're fan shopping, or just whatever you have in your house too, it's that same sort of a ball chain core chain. And then what I did was I ran that through a machine that knits wire. So the wire is knitted and drawn down into this gorgeous sock that just covers that that ball chain. And so I do have a ton of different colors on silversilkonline.com. And this one is called Shoreline. And it has a seafoam colored wire that's over a gunmetal ball chain. So you get this really dark, has a lot of depth, just a very beautiful chain. And it's not as bright as the seafoam color chain that I've got as well, which has a silver ball chain inside of it. This one's kind of more dark and mysterious, if you will. But I love this chain, and I love the color that it complements with all of the other different colors that I'm using. So 11.5 inches of that. Oh, by the way, and the chain size itself is about 2.5 to 3 millimeters. Forgot to mention that. The second length that you will need is 9 inches. So I hope you guys wrote down all these different measurements because there's a variety of different measurements that are there. But again, the idea is to stagger everything, right? So no two strands should be completely the same. I think I've got actually two that are, though. The white one and this one. They're a little bit off. But that's okay. That's perfect. I want these all to be different lengths. So I've got a total of 5. You don't have to stop there. You can go to 6. You can go to 7. As long as you go and taper those ends with seed beads or some smaller beads that will tuck into the cone, then that's all that matters. And if you want to use less strands, by all means, that's perfectly fine too. And you could just straight up use SilverSilk and put those inside of the cone with the technique that I'm about to show you here in a few minutes. And it works all the same. All right, so I told you guys there are 2 ways to crimp this. You can combine all of these strands into a single crimp and make yourself a loop and work with it that way. Personally, that's a great way to conserve materials, but it's probably a lot harder to do as the final end result, especially if you're looking for a technique that is easier to put together this design. So I recommend going back through and crimping all of these individually. Or crumpeting them, as we want to say. All right, so I'm just going to create a small loop as such. And I'm going to grab my crimp pliers. These are my Xuron crimpers, and they work exactly the same as your other crimpers that you might have, the blue-handled ones. They've got a V-shaped divot there that I'm going to squeeze down in first. That separates my wires into 2 different compartments, creating a moon-shaped crimp. And then I'm going to go into my middle notch, because this is 3 different sizes. You can use a tiny crimp, a medium-sized crimp, and a big old giant crimp with the 3 different notches that are there. You can kind of see them with this view. You just go into the middle one and press it down, and it squishes my crimp together into a lovely sort of a fortune cookie. That's what I always thought of it as. And then you can either bead up through your little piece left over or just trim it off, which is what I did. And I'm going to do the second one a little bit faster so we get this project kind of moving along. Okay, just scooch everything down. I will say the Keshi pearls are a little bit difficult to string, especially if you don't have a fine wire. The hole is quite tiny, and I encourage that if you can't string through it one direction, try and go through it with the other way, and sometimes that works. Again, the holes are very tiny, so I totally get it. It's a little hard to see, but have some patience and do your best to string it along, and having the right beading wire definitely helps. All right, I strung my crimp on. I'm going to loop it through. I'm going to situate it on the floor here or on my table surface. If I have it holding up, it's going to inevitably fall out of my hands anyway. So in order to make sure there's no gaps in my design, you could even kind of bow it like this, just so it's like ready to go whenever it's crimped. You can do it that way. Okay, there we go. That looks really good. And I don't have any major spaces going on in my beaded strand there. So I'm just going to go ahead and crimp it. Perfect. All right. Okay, that one's ready to go. So let's do the other 2. Okay, you can leave one of your, well, you could leave both of your bead stoppers on while you do the one side at least. That way it'll ensure that you don't lose any beads, because I've done that before. I've dropped the entire thing on the floor, and luckily I've got a rug beneath me, and so anytime I do drop stuff, the rug will catch it. Otherwise, my wooden floors are not very forgiving for playing 1, 2, 3 bead pickup at any given time. Okay. That we'll have a little bit of wire waste here, but that's all right. Got plenty of soft flex wire on hand. Okay, string that through. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to move this to the side. I'm going to lay this down. And shouldn't be any major gaps. If there's a little bit of a gap, that is okay. This strand needs some space to move around and do its thing. So having a little bit of gap is not a big deal, but you definitely don't want anything above a 1/4 inch at all. Last one. Okay. All right. Hi, Leanne. If it wasn't for the text reminder, I'd never remember to be here. LOL. For sure. We're trying to be diligent about the text messaging as well. I've had a few issues with them recently, but it's been resolved. So we will definitely be informing via texting. If you haven't signed up for our text messaging notifications, then I highly encourage it. It's a great way to quickly reach out to you guys and not have to worry about spam folders in the email. Because sometimes, or often, my emails will end up in people's spam folders. And it's not because I'm spamming you guys, I hope, but it's more of just, you know, with the pictures and other stuff that's included, sometimes your firewall can mistake that as spam email. And so that's where it will end up inevitably. And so you have to ask your email system to not put it in the spam folder. So it's an extra step. With the texting, you don't have to worry about that. You will get the text right into your phone, and all you have to do is just text hello to the number that Joan will actually, she's already posted. Yeah, there we go. She is on it. Thank you for doing that. Okay. There we go. Got my beads all nice and laid out here. Perfect. Crimp. Make sure to tug on that wire that it's not going to come out. And we've got all of our different bead strands that are now crimped. Okay. And we've got our 2 pieces of chain that are ready to go. We've got our 2 bead caps, our 2 crystals, and our clasp hanging out up there. So now the whole thing is, how do we put all this together and make it instantly into a necklace, right? The fun part of all this is seeing it come together. You're going to need a piece of wire. This is the same 26 gauge wire, and this is in a length of 5 inches, I believe. So what I'm going to do is start to string this together. Aw, thanks, Cindy. Hope your holidays were good too. Mine were definitely fun and enjoyable. Lots of family, lots of laughter. I love playing with my niece. She's 3 years old now, and rambunctious and crazy, as you can imagine. But I think it's the funnest age. Okay, I'm going to string on my SilverSilk. I'm going to start with my shorter strands first and work my way to the longer strands. So I think it's this one. SilverSilk. What's neat is you could just string right through that wire, the knits of the wire. And you want to be about 2 of the beads of the ball chain into your SilverSilk there. Okay, and then this last piece here. And what I'm going to do is actually gather my 2 pieces of wire. I'm going to kind of just coil them, twist them together. I'm going to take my shorter piece of wire and wrap it around my SilverSilks as such. Surprisingly, this holds very steady and is quite sturdy. And I'm just going to kind of fold that little piece of wire into the SilverSilk. This will kind of lock everything in place, and you could actually just stick your wire straight up as such. Okay, so I've essentially just bundled everything together. Okay, I'll do the same thing to this side. So I'm going to grab another piece of wire. So go ahead and cut yourself another piece of wire that's about 5 inches and start to string everything together. Okay, I'm trying not to twist this because I want to be diligent about my stringing, but there's no telling how it's going to end up ultimately. It's kind of the fun part about this, I guess. Actually, let's do this one. And you see why I think individually crimping these makes it so much easier to string all this together. Okay, there we go. Again, just grab a hold of the two ends, twist a couple times. Go ahead and wrap one of the wire pieces around the SilverSilk and tuck it in. It can be ugly, by the way. This wrap can be ugly and messy and not pretty at all. It's going to hide inside of your cones anyway. But what you do want to make sure is that it's sturdy and that it's going to hold together and be bundled correctly. So now you just string your cone right through it and right on top as such, and you'll notice that everything just kind of magically comes together. So the end here, we're going to do the same thing as our beaded chain links. We're going to string on our crystal. Otherwise, our bead cap would just kind of fall out of the loop there. So this little bead helps to stop it in place. Okay, I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers, push that wire forward to get my 90-degree angle. I'm going to situate my round nose pliers to be right inside of that elbow and work my wire around. Now, at this point, do not forget to include the chain link as you're making this loop. So I'm going to fold this up, grab one of my chains, go ahead and string it through, and then grab a hold of my loop and then just work this wire around. For smaller wire, you will be surprised at how great this will hold up. And it just really disappears into your design and your chain entirely, especially if your chain is on the thinner side and not so much the paperclip chain. Okay, I just trimmed it. I didn't trim it quite as much as I wanted. Whoops, because I had my pliers turned out wrong. There we go. And then just tuck in the wire with your pliers as such. And that is one side. Now let's do the other. Okay, string that cone right on. String your 4mm crystal. And same process as before. So this project is really great if you're wanting to make some simple loops. Some wire wrap loops come to life here. And get some practice out of it too. And if you're an expert wire wrap maker, what am I trying to say? Wire wrap loop maker, then this project is going to be a breeze for you. Forgot to flip that up. That's why it's not going through. Okay, there we go. Okay, going to push that back down, twist this around and around until I get a nice little coil there. Trim off the end of my wire. Okay. I love those little cutters. They really get into those tight spaces. Kara says, such a cool necklace. Thank you, Kara. I am in love with it too. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the very last step here is just to attach the clasp, which is super easy. Grab your jump rings, pry apart your jump rings by pushing them up toward you and away from you. And then go ahead and slip your chain link into it and close it back up. In this case, it'll be the chain link plus your clasp. And that's really about it. And that, my friends, is our beautiful Making Waves necklace. Put it on my table all nice and decorated like. Isn't that just fun? It's so easy to put together. I know we took our time making this design. I'm going to actually flash back over to me. Love your perfect loops. Thank you. CP Hawaii. We really took our time, really talked about how to make those wire wrapped loops perfect and consistent as possible. And hopefully that's a great takeaway for this video. Ultimately, this is quite easy and fast to put together. And the cones and I think the pearls just really enhance the silver silk. And the silver silk just adds that extra texture that, I don't know, you can't really replicate with any other material or design out there. So this piece is very special. I love having it in my collection. I know you guys will have such a fun time making it. So I'm going to do a quick scroll through the comments just to see if there were any outstanding questions. Terry says, love this necklace. Thank you, Terry. We got Miss Cindy in the house too. Beautiful necklace. Thank you. Miss Jennifer says, once again, Nile has perfected perfection. You're always so extra, Jennifer, and I live for it. Thank you. Vanessa says, love those text notifications. I'm saying that's a great way to keep up with you guys out there. And I do check those pretty frequently as well, just to see if you guys have any questions. If you can't reach me by email, that's also a good way to just pop in for a quick question if you've got one. And Leanne says, you rock, Nile. You guys rock. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in and watching my videos time and time again. And we got our Facebook friend. We got, let's see, this is such a great idea, Joan. Thank you. And props to Joan also, because Joan is such a great support system in the background. I don't think I could do many of these videos as successful without her. So I don't know how I've been doing it all these years without her. And Teresa, in fact, Teresa's also such an incredible lady for helping us with the Silkies group. All right. Well, I'm going to post this one last comment from Marianne, my friend from Arizona. Nile's designs are simple to make, yet always comes out elegant and classy. A real art. Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you again, Nile, for sharing your talent and designs with us. So thank you. That's really such a sweet message, and I feel like I'm reading some things that are making me tear up here. Okay, so Stephanie's asking, how many of the small beads did you put on the wire? So these, let's see. I'm assuming you meant these stuff. There are 10 of these baby little beads. And really, this length is up to you guys, whatever you want to put to either extend out your necklace and make it longer, or you could just use a few. You don't even have to use 10. You could use like 5 just to get a pop of color in there if you want to. So that's really up to you. Hopefully that answers your question. Shara, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Love it. Thank you for such a great design. Yes, it's over from Sam's Beads shop. I know where you're from. But I'm so glad you became part of our Silkies little group here too, and love seeing your name pop in. And you're such a help with Sam's bead shop as well for his group, and love seeing your posts too. All right, well, you guys, I think this has been a wonderful class. We're gonna take a short break and then come back with another tutorial at 2 o'clock Central Time, which is about an hour from now. And we're going to be making our next design, which looks like this here shortly, the Sandshore necklace. This one's pretty exciting. It's quite a complex knot, but we're really going to break it down and do it step by step. So I love each and every one of you so much. Thank you so much again for tuning in. You can find more of these products on silversilkonline.com. Don't forget to follow my Instagram at silversilk and more. And I will see you guys at the next tutorial. Bye.